I have an opportunity to be here because a lot of people don't realize, but this is the last day of, I believe it's Women's Month. And since nobody in this room would exist without a woman, we should be thankful. I'm slightly disappointed. Actually, I should tell you guys who I am first. I just assume everybody know who I am. I'm just a normal, regular guy. My name is Millard Larkin. I've lived here for the past, I think we built our house here in 1999. But prior to living here, I was in San Francisco for quite a few years, by way of Chicago. What should I say? San Francisco? Yeah, San Francisco by way of Chicago. In San Francisco, I was a city commissioner. I did quite a few things. I was on 2 commissions. I was the president of the Southeast Facilities Commission, and I was a member of the Board of Trustees for the housing, San Francisco public housing. Major task. Got to know a lot of mothers, a lot of single mothers who struggle with their kids, contrary to a lot of the things that we hear now and that we see happening now. We realize that the one thing the president said that's right, the term is right, he's not right in my opinion, but fake news. Because I can tell you stories about families that I don't even see how they made it. Families that sent kids not only to high school and college, but they went on to do great things for the city and great things for our country. But I want to get back to today, because I was standing outside waiting to greet people as they came in. And a lot of us are tied into traditions that sometimes don't even benefit us. You know, so I don't want to knock anybody's tradition or what they're doing, because this is a major weekend for a lot of people. But again, it's a month that we shouldn't overlook women. And I say that because I'm from a family of 10. My mom was probably about that tall. But dealing with 10 kids, 10 different personalities, cooking food for 10 children, you know. The one thing about being from a family of 10, you don't have to worry about if somebody say they don't want their food. You can sit at the table. Somebody say, by the time they finish saying I don't want it, it's gone. I was looking at the title of this, and I looked at the word deities. And I thought that that was very, very nice. And to be honest, I didn't even know what the word meant. So when I looked it up, am I pronouncing it right? Deities? Deity. So you could tell. I'm in church, so I have to tell the truth. So when I looked it up, I found out that it means goddess. And I think all women are either goddesses or have the potential to be a goddess. So I want to say it like that. I would really like to see more young women involved in these things. I've done many of these. I wrote programs in San Francisco that they use today. If you ever go to San Francisco and you go to the monument for Dr. King, that used to be the 2nd largest monument in the world until they did the one in Washington. That's the 2nd. Now ours is the 3rd. I was the president of the San Francisco chapter of the MLK Civic Committee. I got a lot of credit. The work was done by women. Most of the organizations that I've been part of, the workers were the women. Men took the bows, but the women did the bulk of the work. And why am I saying that? Of course, because it's Women's Month. But also right now, if you look around the United States, and you look at the problems that we're having with all kind of young men being shot, all kind of young women being abused that we don't even hear about. We have a forum here right now that deals with education, that have sisters here that are well educated, well versed, and that we're fortunate to have here. And we have empty chairs. So I hope that in our prayer that we ask God, whoever our God is or whoever we hold high, to make sure that some of the knowledge that's going to be passed on here today is sent out to young men and young women in some kind of way. spiritually, or however it is. So having taken up enough of your time, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to be doing.
We're going to bring
and that's invocation.
Yeah.
So we're fortunate to have somebody that I know. And I think it's pretty deep. And I'm just going to call him Brother Reggie. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Just a small introduction for me. I am a native of California, born and raised in Hayward, California, product of Hayward schools. Graduated in 1973. So I've been on the planet a while. And I can say one big advance for my generation, you didn't have to explain the civil rights movement to me. I lived it. And after the Hayward school system, I went to California State University system, graduated from California State. Hayward, what used to be California State Hayward is now California State East Bay. I like Hayward. But I'm a transplant to Antioch, and I moved to Antioch primarily because it reminded me, at least on the surface, of Hayward, kind of a rural setting, you know, where there's open space. But what I thought was an educational system that would be similar to Hayward, not the case. But I have two kids who were products, graduates, victims of the Antioch Unified School District. I mean, because it became clear to me that this area has some vestiges of some deeply seated racism that is very hard to mask. So that said, I rely on two things. One is the education that I fought very hard to take advantage of. I didn't take it for granted. But the other part is my spiritual outlook, because I know there are times when I don't have the answers for nothing. I just close my eyes and say, God, I give it to you. All right, with that said, all hearts and minds clear. Father God, thank you for inviting all and giving all safe passage to this building today so that we may embark on some exchanges, some information that we know as we go forward will benefit us and the children and community in particular that we care for. Thank you for Dr. Rasheed and his vision. Thank you for having people who are obviously involved in a mission that states we are our children's future. I want to thank you for having a wife who is an educator, a son who is also an educator, and a daughter who I assume, because that's her legacy, will be an educator. And thank you for humbling me to understand that I don't have all the answers, but it's prudent at least to be around people who do have some of the answers. With that said, I give you all the honor, all the praise, and all the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Okay. That was wonderful. Lifted my spirit.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to have Essence,
Here, a
video, Black Girl Magic, episode 1.
So actually, we're going to pivot a little bit. I want to embarrass a young person in here right now. No, it's not you, brother. Relax. But this is her work. And this young lady behind the camera, I would actually like her to come up here and join the panel, but I know she probably doesn't want to do that. So I'm going to give her an out. But she's an artist in her own right. And I think we need to acknowledge her work and acknowledge her for all she's doing and all she will become. So this is a snippet of her work that she's done past this month at the Women's March here, I believe in San Francisco. Now, you may have various ideologies regarding the Women's March. I do, but that's not the case here. We're looking at the work that's being done by this young person. So please indulge me as we take a few minutes and look at her work.
When I'm feeling down 438 days ago, Donald Trump was elected President of the United States of America.
365 days ago was his inauguration, a day that many women feared that their long battle for equality would come to a screeching halt.
364 days ago, millions of men, women, and children gathered across the country to march in solidarity and in power against their new government. And now, today, on January 20th, 2018, millions march again.
Since the 6 million marched in 2017, we as a country,
We as women have dealt with a lot, but unfortunately, none of it is new.
the threat of women not receiving the necessary health care and sexual assault along with the hiding of it.
From the continued attacks on Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood to the Me Too and Time's Up movements,
Celebrities are speaking out.
And public officials are being outed.
as we march in 2018, the motto is Look Back, March Forward.
Women are demanding change. We are speaking out and speaking up.
And this is only the beginning. 2018 is the year of women, in politics and everywhere else.
We cannot and will not be oppressed any longer.
The silence was broken, and now is the time to act. We won't tolerate people still trying to tell us what to do.
It is my body, my choice.
No really does mean no.
Women aren't objects.
And no matter what our president says, it's not okay to grab women by the
So we're looking at you, Trump. You say you're not sexist, your supporters say you're not a misogynist,
Prove it.
prove the world wrong.
and to Trump supporters, it's not too late to admit you were wrong,
He may already be in office.
And he may have already done some damage.
but you can still join our fight.
Get active. Vote. Vote for representatives who are dedicated to fighting for equality.
If you're under 18, pre-register to vote. Educate yourself and help educate others.
Visit www.house.gov/representatives to find out how to contact your local representative and tell them how important women's rights are to you.
Get involved.
And don't let this be another year you stand idly by.
All across the world, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Okay, let's give that young lady a round of applause, please. It's important now. Yeah, I primarily work with black males, but the work doesn't just stop with them. It extends to their family, and we need to acknowledge our young ladies when they're doing this. This young lady always does my infomercials, anything she's available to video, she's there. So I wanted to acknowledge her and also embarrass her at the same time. So with that being said, now we'll see the Sage Still video, but I wanted to make sure we honor our young people that are present and that are doing this particular work. So again, it was important for that to happen. So you still have a welcome invitation to join the panel because you are an artist, but again, I am giving you an out, but I would love for you to be part of this particular conversation. So I'll move over and you can come sit down. But again, so let's go to the next video and then we're gonna get started with the discussion.
I'm an artist. At the end of the day, most famous artists are like old, dead, white guys. While that might be great for some people, I'm not completely comfortable with having to look at that as inspiration all the time. There's a need for exposure for young artists of color and young queer artists and other marginalized peoples. Why don't we make the platform to launch other people's art and get other people recognized? Black women have to start so much further back. If someone's saying you're gonna be uncomfortable because that's just the way it is in society, that's great, but I would like to know what specifically in society makes it like that so I can try to fix it so other people don't have to feel that way. I think that's a beautiful thing to be unapologetic and a Black woman. My dad wanted to name me Savannah, and my mom was like, no. She wanted something that would be pretty but also meaningful. It's a lot of pressure to live up to that name. Being wise was definitely something they wanted from me, and so that became my name, Sage. The internet was really influential in helping me find the right consciousness. I started to see a lot more content that was breaking the mold. Carefree Black kids, gender fluid Black kids. It's something that I've been feeling for a long time, and I didn't know other people felt that way. So I started sharing my own art and started posting my own pictures. Making a real community. It just being us is not enough. There should be somewhere that everyone can really tap in and really live through that. You didn't get to create art when you were younger, create some art now. Like, what is stopping you from being that carefree Black kid that you were never? My friend posted this picture and their caption was art ho. A blogger that I knew, Mars, said, I think this is a really good word to summarize being a young creative of color at this time. And through that came the Art Ho Collective. The collective is a group of not only bloggers, but other creatives. Kids of color kind of coming together and creating a platform for art is not something that has really been seen before. It's important that it's called Art Ho's because we want to define how we're being seen. I noticed that no matter if I was wearing the same outfit as a white girl, I was the one who was getting dress coded because of my inherent dangerous sexuality. In the same way that Black boys are hyper-masculinized, Black girls are hypersexualized and dehumanized. So we get to choose our narrative. We get to represent ourselves. I was raised very firmly to be who I was at all points. I had a really good childhood. I was really curious. My mom encouraged me to do fencing and gymnastics. She's always trying to push me to do things that aren't in the norm for Black girls. My dad, he just taught me a lot about the world. He read the paper to me. We read a bunch of books together. I was very free, always free. And then once you start to get older, things get more complicated. I was one of 2 Black girls in the same environment as all these 1% white kids. I started to feel as if I didn't have a reason to be this confident. I was comparing and contrasting myself to all of these white people. That really started to bottle up. And so my mom started to help me meet some other intelligent young Black women and some very powerful mentors. Then I read books like Sister Citizen, Their Eyes Were Watching God. I read Asada. Now I had some basis for, feeling awesome and female and Black. It changed my perspective of where my place was in the world. And then my dad passed away. My art teacher said to me, if you ever need a place just to hang out, the art room is, a safe space for you. It gave me a voice. When you go through a tragedy, everything is gonna just suck for a really long time if you don't find something that you're so passionate about that makes you get out of bed every morning. My activism, my art, it just woke me up in the morning. That's taking back those negative images and turning them on other people and showing them that my culture is beautiful and it's just as beautiful as yours. My life is a little different than my parents had pictured for me. They thought I'd have stellar grades, that I'd be this amazing academic. This whole avenue of activism was something that they didn't really plan. My dad reading the New York Times every morning, he really fueled my interest in politics from an early age, giving me access to politics as something that I'm entitled to rather than something that I have no place in. I don't know if I've earned the name Sage yet, but I think he would be pretty happy that I decided to use my personality to really try to put myself out there for other people. I didn't start on the internet to be a personality or be someone that people recognize. I started it because I didn't recognize myself. There are so many voices that are really just waiting to be heard. I want to do something that gives people the chances that I had. I think my purpose here on this earth is to create safe environments for people who look like me, and even people who don't look like me, but are the only people who look like them in the place that they are. Having Black Girl Magic to me means having the space to not only be myself, but improve the world for others to be themselves.
You notice I was hesitant about just jumping up that time. Because the last time I jumped up, the film started going. So. That was beautiful. Now I have the pleasure to introduce you guys to artist and activist, Sage Atlas.
Well, that was it. So we're going.
So I guess we're moving on. The introduction of the panel. And as you can see, I have Miss Shaniqua Gay. Shaniqua Gay from Atlanta. Tiffany Malone.
Malonsome.
Oh, that's beautiful. I can say that. Malonsome. From Antioch.
I'm from Oakland.
From Oakland, California. Okay, so. And of course, you all know Dr. Rasheed, and he's going to be your moderator. So we're ready to go into panel discussions and presentations, and thank you all for your patience. And I'm glad it's a few more people that showed up. Welcome. And what you missed so far, we've acknowledged the fact that this is the last day of Women's Month and how important it is. And we even talked about women in politics. And I'm not familiar with all of the politicians, but I don't think I need that.
Okay.
Can everybody can hear me, right? Yeah. So I only see one elected official that I know, and she can stand up and tell you who she is herself. I don't know the rest of them. So I have to say, of course, I'm a bit biased, but in my mind, a G.R.I.O.T here in Antioch, where we need a lot of work with our school board, a lot. And I can tell you, as a parent of 5 girls, that has my youngest daughter is the only one left in high school, and to keep her from going to school in Antioch, I had to rent a apartment her freshman year in another area, so that she could go to a decent school. And the bad part about it is the schools are not terrible. The schools are just not being ran right, in my opinion. And as a former city commissioner, I do have a little knowledge about it. We do have another hero, and I know I'm going off record, but sometimes you got to recognize people. The gentleman sitting next to her, ever since I've been living out here, has been fighting to change the school systems, not only in Antioch, but in other places as well, to make sure that our young people get a decent education. And I'm saying that to simply say this. I don't care who like it and who don't. If you raise dumb kids, you get dumb adults. And if you got dumb adults, we keep going through the same changes that we're going through right now. You're paying teachers to run the schools. I mean, you're paying teachers to educate our children. You're paying superintendents to do our will. Yet, in Antioch, in my humble opinion, we're paying people to tell us how we're going to educate our kids. People that have no idea what we go through, as African Americans and other minorities, people who have no idea of how to change it. We have a lot of educated folks here that know what's going on in the communities and know how to reach out and reach children, and they don't get that opportunity. And a lot of it is because we have empty chairs in this room right now. A lot of it is because when you do get your opportunity, you're afraid to say what it is. You're paying police. They are our employees to kill our kids, to kill us. We're paying teachers that are afraid to teach because when they do, they have a problem with the superintendent. They're afraid to talk about what's wrong in the classrooms because there's reprisal from the board. We have a board, in my humble opinion, that's dysfunctional. I'm adamant about that because I have one child that'll be out of school, out of high school, into college, so I won't have to deal with it. But you know what the problem is? Every kid that's in school is our child. Every kid that look like us is our child. You know, I hear everybody say it take a village to raise a child. So where's the village? Where's the village? And I only say, you know, you don't have a right to talk about it if you're not trying to do nothing about it. I volunteer in the schools. I volunteered in the schools for years. I've ran for office. I've been in office. So I don't just talk about what a problem is. I'm willing to work to solve a problem. So I'm hoping that that's what we take away from this today, that we listen, that we become involved, and that we find out what we can do to help make the changes. So having said that, I'll turn it over to the moderator, the Honorable Dr. Rasheed.
Honorable. So I don't think I need the mic. Thank you, Brother Larkin. I see that, just want to acknowledge everybody who came out. I see I've been losing weight because I haven't been to see Soul Food Cafe, but I'm good there soon, brother. I see my brother in the back, Leonard, and his beautiful wife, Shanta Archie, everybody, my mentees, sisters, brothers, everybody who's here. Thank you for coming out. I know it's the day before Easter, you know, like we said earlier, people getting their hair did and cooking and stuff like that. So we're glad that you're here. So listen, these sisters right here have some information to convey to you. I'm just excited to be here on the panel. We had another sister, and unfortunately things happened. Sister Rhonda Brown wasn't able to be here, but we're going to connect again, and we're going to have her here, and we're going to do it much bigger and greater next time. Before we go into the presentation, I just want to talk about how we kind of framed this, how when we were conversing about how we're going to do this. We're celebrating Women's History Month, and it goes beyond a month, right? We don't just stop doing it tomorrow. We say, oh, April Fools. No, we don't stop doing it just because it's April 1st. We do it all year long, just like we celebrate Black History Month all year long. So this is not something we just do in isolation. But with that being said, you know, I get into conversations about Black males and Black females and how sometimes we're kind of at odds with each other, and we're human nature, and that is true. But you know, historically, we've always supported each other, and I think it's important for us to convey that narrative. You know, I have these wonderful sisters here. Dr. Fraser couldn't be here, but there's many of us who do work together and support each other. But oftentimes we hear the Jerry Springer, we hear the housewife stuff, we hear all that, and we don't really support our sisters and vice versa, like we should. So I really wanted us to kind of frame the conversation in that way. With that being said, we're going to first start off with Tiffany. Usually this is, we talk about their bio, but within their presentations, their work kind of speaks to their bio. And so I'm just going to allow them to kind of do that and stop talking and do more listening. They have presentations set up for us. And then after that, we'll roll right into Shaniqua, who is this wonderful artist. Some of her work is right there when you walk in. Now that's my work, so it's not for sale. You go to the sister's website and then you can purchase it, but those are my pieces. And I'm happy to say that I met her through a mutual friend, and she's just this amazing artist, and you'll see her work. So with that being said, we're gonna start with Tiffany. You need the mic, or
Yes, I'll take the mic.
Okay, because she can sing, so she might want to take the mic.
I'll take the mic.
And just let me know.
How's everybody doing this evening? Hi everybody, my name is Tiffany Malone, better known as Malonsome because that was my original family name. They come from New Orleans, Louisiana, so I do have culture. I'm an artist, songwriter, and producer. The key points that I want to discuss today is who am I? What did I choose? Why did I choose music as my medium? Who inspired me to do music, and how music is inspired by others, like how do I? Because everybody talk about why they do music, but how do your music actually touch the community? Why are you doing music? Are you being a negative person that's gonna teach little girls how to do disrespectful things, or are you gonna be actually an influence on the community? And for me, when I started at 4 years old, I always want to be an influence more than a negative entity. What's next in my music career, and then we're going to listen to a piece of my music and do a little Q&A, if that's okay with you guys. So as I said, my name is Tiffany Malone. My family name is originated as Malonsome. To create my own brand and representation of who I am as an individual, I changed my stage name to Tiffany Malonsome. This is a Creole name that originated in New Orleans. Creole to me is not just a French entity, but I always represent me as a black woman. And I want to always say that because many women who have curly hair and everything always say, oh, I'm mixed with this, I'm mixed with that. But being black is the creating of the being of all things for me. I was born and raised in Oakland, California, born on May 3rd, 1984. I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, and educator. I have a BA in Broadcast Communications from Cal State Hayward, as it used to be, but now it's East Bay. And I have a Master's in Educational Leadership, specialization of technology. Currently, I'm working on my doctorate in Educational Leadership, Administration, and Higher Education, because now I feel that it's time to take it on to the adult level. Because I feel like I have a lot to speak about when it comes to adult issues, and mainly of who we are as a people. But still, with all these things I have accomplished, music and being a mother has still found a way to be my main focus. I always like to quote to myself, whatever you create in life, make sure you can see yourself within your art. And I know that this young lady right here can definitely feel that. Whatever I create, I want to make sure it's a great representation of who I am as a person. The people who have inspired me in my life has been my mother, and foremost. When I was a little girl, I used to hear her singing around in the kitchen, and I used to be like, that's what I want to do. I always knew that I wanted to sing. Billie Holiday, because jazz has always been my first love. Young people my age does not appreciate jazz, but it creates so much rhythm and struggle and heartache, and that's me. I like to be real. Big Mama Thornton. Many of you might know she created the song Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog that Elvis Presley ended up re-singing. Betsy Smith, Patti LaBelle, Aretha Franklin, Luther Vandross, Phil Perry, and Minnie Riperton. Those have been my inspirations. Look at him. He got his favorites. I like a lot more, but these are the main people that I listen to. I like to listen to male vocals too because it creates a broader range of singing for me. So how has my music inspired others? For me, mainly, my daughter is inspired by my music, and that's who I foremost always look at. As an artist, we have to be aware of who is paying attention. For me, my daughter watches every move I make. I'm teaching her how to be a woman through the choices I make. I also inspire other little girls as well as women. I inspire little girls because I show them they can have a voice. I show them that they can be and accomplish whatever they want in life. Adult women appreciate the honesty in my music and the way I convey relationship messages, because I do get personal and I talk about other people around me. You know, a lot of people talk about BS in their music or whatever else, but I want people, when they hear me, I want them to hear me, I want them to feel me. Where has music taken me so far? Well, 11 years old, I recorded my first release. I don't know if you guys remember MC Pooh Man. I did that at 11 years old. At age 15 years old, I was placed on MTV's Usher's Duets. Age 16, I started working on my first album. I had moved away to LA. I was on Aftermath Records. It was very overwhelming for a young lady in the industry, especially someone who knows what they're going to stand for, because you really have to stand your grounds in the industry. You can get pushed this way and pushed that way. But my upbringing has always grounded me. And as you can see, I have many more accomplishments. Moving on to the next. Why did I choose music as my medium? I chose music because it was a way for me to convey my message where I could tell truths and nobody can get offended. Because usually when you speak out to the community or people around you, you say certain things, they can take it a certain way. But you put a little beat and a little melody to it, they can hear you. What's next in my career? So currently I have performed at the Stockton Arena, Tommy T's and Yoshi's just recently, but now I'm working on my album that's going to be entitled Many Faces of Me, because I want people to see a array of my struggles and where I'm trying to go. So I really took a lot of time out to sit back and think about who is Tiffany as a person, not just a face. I don't want to just be a beautiful face. I want to be something that's legendary. Next. So we're going to take this moment out to listen to a piece of my music. It's called Fam.
I woke up this morning and my pillow was stained.
So as y'all can see, that was a real situation, real story of things I see around me. And I just want young ladies to know you don't have to fight nobody. Just move on with your situation and better days will come. So we have any question and answers? Questions for anybody? Yes. Yes, I do. I do. I have a very broad range of songs on my album, even jazz. So that's why I call it Many Faces of Me, because I wanted to reach everybody. Not just the young generation, but the older generation as well.
Yeah. I haven't produced a little music myself. You know, why don't you talk just a little bit about, you know, what go into it? Because people, when we get it, it's a finished product. We don't understand that, like, the situation is where you get your motivation to write the music. So a little bit about that, and then what happened when you get in the studio, you know, mixing and different things.
Okay. So it takes a minute to write songs. Believe it or not, you have to really get into a certain place. Me personally, I like to go down by Lake Mary, by the water, really get my thoughts out where I don't have anybody else in my ear, write out my stuff. It usually takes me to 1 to 2 days usually to think about a situation and make sure it makes sense. That's the educator in me. Make sure everything is flowing. So after I do that, we go to the studio. I produce myself. A lot of women artists do not produce. That's what got me into it. Actually knowing how to do the melody of the song, putting together the beats. That can take about 4 or 5 hours within itself just to get that piece together. And getting in the booth, sometimes you can lose your motivation because you don't have a crowd of people like cheering you on. You inside a booth, you alone, so it's acting that goes into it. You sitting there, you like, I gotta really think about these words to the song. How am I gonna get into it? So I really close my eyes when I'm in the booth. I imagine myself in a scene and I go with it. And then another process is mixing and mastering. Making sure that the vocals does not sound distorted. It's really hard work. You know, it's a science within itself. Any other questions?
Your lyrics, I can't shake, what was it, man in me?
So basically, in Ebonic terms, to get with the younger generation, shake means I can't stop or I can't get over the situation. So the song was basically about a man that a woman had put all this energy into. And she cheated on her. He cheated on her. And she's like, I can't understand it. But she has a lot to lose. So she's like, I can't fight these people. You know what I'm saying? But she's telling the crowd out loud of what she's going through. So instead, at the end of the song, as you heard her, she's basically saying that, you know what? I'm just going to leave the situation alone. Because it's not worth risking everything that you done build up and work hard for. So that's basically what the song was about.
Yeah, I thought I heard I can't shake the man in me.
I can't shake the memories.
Memories, oh, thank you. I'm going to be qualified on that.
Yeah, I can't shake the memories. Yes. Oh, you can go.
I was going to just ask you, like, are you working as an educator and then you are also doing your music?
Yes, I'm doing both.
Wow.
I'm a multitasker.
So that was my question, just how do you find a balance just between being a full-time educator, your music, a mother, like you have quite a few things going on. How do you find a balance?
You know what? I just go with the flow of life. I take everything a day at a time. And I never mix the mediums, you know. So it's hard. It's not easy. As she know, me and her work hand in hand. She's the chair of our school department.
Oh.
Yes.
Can I ask? How have you kept your sanity? Well, no, just when you understand the music industry and all that kind of goes into that. How have you kept your sanity? How have you kept your spirit up, and how have you kept going as a musician? Because a lot of times people go through things that break them.
Well, like I said, I had a strong background, a mother who was always strong. She's my manager. And also it takes practice. When I first got into the music industry, it was hard because I was young. I was 19 years old in LA all alone by myself. So you go through this thing like you torn from your family, But the strength that she instilled in me kept me strong. Because I've never been the type of person to wear my feelings on my shoulder. I go home at night and feel whatever I feel. But I was always able to snap back when I get in front of people. So I think that's always been the greatest strength for me, personally. Yes.
All right, we're going to take one more, and then we're going to go to Shaniqua. Then at the conclusion, then if you guys have any more questions, we could ask those then, please. All right.
Yes.
Do you distribute your music? What kind of distribution do you have?
So I own my own company because I've learned over the years to have an independent label, and right now I'm shopping for a distribution deal. And the album will be ready in the next 2 months. So, yeah. That's what I'm doing. But thank you guys.
Mark, one more.
I just want to know, do you use your musical talent in the classroom?
Actually, my students didn't know until this year that I even sang. Thanks to this lady right here. You know, I try to keep it separated.
But I would think with the, you know, how students are so into music that would be a plus.
Yes, and we're actually trying to put together something right now because we're, like you said, it's very racist out here. We're in San Lorenzo Unified School District, which is very racist. So me and her, we're like the only two. And we're trying to put together something now where we have artists come in and see where our students want to go.
And that's just her being an advocate. She just really shows it in the classroom. It's really difficult, even when you're speaking to our young black kids. They don't know. They don't understand. And so when she's in the classroom, like she said, she keeps it real. And the music part, I keep telling the kids, because, you know, I'm a little bit older than she is, so the kids, and I'm like, well, you know, Miss Malone sitting there like, what? You know, and she knows the music, so that's always, like you said, a way to tap into the kids, the music part of it. And so she was saying, I said, you know, we had a career fair, and the kids were like, we don't want to go hear these people, we don't want to be doctors, we don't want to be, you know, the kids were just really negative about it. And I looked at her and I said, did they ask you to take part in this? And so that's what we're going to move forward to try to bring some people from because a lot of these kids want to go into the music industry and broadcasting. And so that's our next step.
Yeah, and I do have my degree in broadcast. So I really connect with my students though. I keep it really real with them. What's the pros and cons if they choose the path they want to keep going on. So I do get to them because I'm still young.
All right, let's give it up. You want the lights? Yeah, absolutely. Get the lights, please. And if you want to do it, or do you want me to do it?
Either. Do you feel?
Just say the word.
Just say the word.
Right there. Yes. Okay.
This little thing right there, if you can press that.
Full screen.
Full screen.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. So first I'm going to read a quick poem to you guys to kind of get you into the inspiration behind my title and my why. So it says, I come as us, I stand as we, I speak as they, as them who have names but no bodies, only spirit living through me. She who is untouchable, unapproachable, yet as God, as forgotten, as pushed away into the place of no return, and yet I have earned my right to be here. Wherever I am, I belong, sung on tongue, humming hymnals, to get through marred passages, uncharted territories. I come from lands where I am first, revered as queen, but here I am considered savage. Here my babies are slaughtered by the generations, but a few get through, yet dismembered, feared and revered, beautiful and wretched, neglected and attended, but only in prisons. Honored amongst stripes and oranges, fields and courts, a life of sport, ever the tool, rarely discoursed. On remorse, on reprieve, on recompense, a deeper henny targets. I come as us, I stand as we, I speak as they, as them who have names but no bodies. And so I wanted to kind of share kind of where I'm getting my title from. And when I say I come as us, I come as women, as mothers, as sisters, as the nurturers of our community. I come as a mother. I'm a mother of an 18-year-old who is absolutely in love with girls. Prayer, please. last week we on the long stretch. He is a senior, so I'm almost done. So I come as us, and so I'm just going to talk about my past, my practice, my process, and my psyche. So next slide, you can just hit the arrow. Should be nice. So just to talk about my previous work before I got to the Fair Game Project. So I created mostly Southern women. I am originally from Atlanta, Georgia, a Southern native. Any Southerners in here? All by myself. Got one. Hold your hand up high. All right. All right. So Southern culture for me is church hats and mamas and St. Paul AME. So all of those things kind of growing up with very strong women, but also growing up in a household, two-parent household with a very religious mother and a father who did not believe. My father was abusive to my mother verbally, physically, and mentally. And so on one hand, being able to see her strong and standing as a powerful black woman, but on the other end, kind of seeing her degraded and demeaned. And so as a young person and as a creative, looking for ways to create agency for black women, that was a real desire for me as a young person. Post Bill Cosby, having all of these issues, we'll focus on putting Cosby. So the Cosby Show for me was very, very inspirational because they had a lot of black artists, right? So he was a major collector. So who he and Camille were in real life was who he was on that show, which was collectors of black art. And for me, as an African-American female, similar to Tiffany, I grew up in a what I consider a post-redneck society. Our family was the second family to move into our second black family to move into our neighborhood. I was always one of two African Americans within my class, and so kind of growing up, not necessarily seeing faces that looked like me only when I went home. So definitely seeking agency and looking for images of black women and seeing that I could have that power within my own body of work. So this one, the root, the mother, the teacher, the healer. This is my version of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. All right. I am a daughter of two pastors. So belief is very much entangled in my work. Next slide, please. And just to kind of give you a gist of what my previous work looked like. Standing on the Corner of Circumstance, acrylic, oil on canvas. This is 2011. Next. And The Quiet Strength of Jubilee. This is oil on canvas, 2013. Again, looking for opportunities to centralize African American females, to talk about our past as well as our future. Next slide, please. The Fair Game Project I developed in 2011. This was encouraged from media, encouraged from being a mother, kind of seeing all these things going on and being bombarded. In 2007, I had a dream where I saw African American men kind of running, shape-shifting between becoming deer and men, and they were being chased by all of these people. They were being chased by police officers, they were being chased by women, they were being chased by men who looked like them. And it's like, at the time, I had no idea of how to approach that type of body of work. Why? Because my previous work, as you can see, was African American females and church hats. I had a collector base, and so for me to go from my collector base of Sunday black women to hybrids, that was a bit difficult for me. So next slide, please. But I decided to move forward in 2011 because mostly because of all of these images that we've been bombarded through, most specifically through the Obama administration, and I did not feel like that was by happen chance, right? So we have a leadership in the White House, but black men and our black communities were attacked greatly within that time during that administration. So some of these faces should look familiar to you, Philando Castile, as well as the Time magazine cover. Next slide, please. Why I talk about social issues? I personally, when I see these black men being killed I immediately see people who look like me and people who I'm connected to, okay? So this first young man here is my cousin, Marcel Gay. He was shot and killed about 3 or 4 years ago over in a local community called the West End in Atlanta. This young man here is my son. These here, this is my family, and then most specifically, this last image is my brother, my younger brother, who died in a car accident now 10 years ago. We just celebrated his passing anniversary on March 18th. In losing my brother, that definitely kind of gave me a push, solely because while he died in a car accident, there was a lot of speculation behind his accident and how he passed away. And so I looked to my art as a form of a catharsis. But I did not look to my art for a form of catharsis for 3 years. So I didn't paint for about almost 4 years. Because whereas I have at one point turned to my art, I couldn't turn to anything for a very, very long time because that literally knocked the breath out of me. My brother and I were very, very close. And so I feel like my need to speak about these issues that happen with black men is also my way as being an older sister looking for ways to kind of cover and to protect. Next slide. All right, so why am I painting deer people? So these kind of amalgamated figures. My first inspiration, so when you think about deer is one of the most hunted animals here in America. And we within the black community are not unfamiliar with being hunted. Why? Because how we got over here is we were hunted, right? So outside of us being kind of traded in, we were also chased down to be brought over here. All right, next slide, please. All right, and so the Fair Game Project, I talk about a couple of things. I don't just talk about police violence or the white man trying to get us. I also talk about how we have black on black crime. So in this image, you'll see the man with the gun also looks like the man being shot. And what you see in the background is a deer. You ever heard of the term deer in headlights? I feel like the deer in headlights is our community, right? So we kind of stand, watch, and see what's going on, but very rarely are we engaged and very rarely do we interact. I think a brother was talking about that earlier, how we kind of, we have time to video, take pictures of it, but nobody's engaged. And so I feel like we kind of have this deer in headlights mode. When you think about Philando Castile and the police officer who shot him, if you read the transcript about that, the police officer said he had a deer in headlights look to him. And if you have time, go and look at what that means for police officers. All right, next slide, please. This is Get That Dough. Is that me? This is Get That Dough. Get That Dough is my response to prison culture, in that black males have a tendency to be seen as worth more in prison than they do on the street. And so Get That Dough is a play on words, dough meaning deer and dough as well as meaning money. A prisoner is worth about $36,000 a year. How much more would that man be worth if he were being educated as opposed to being in prison? All right, next slide, please. American Pathological Optimism. I began to toy with toile actually back in 2013. I was commissioned by a company in Savannah, Georgia, and chosen to be a representative of Georgia to go and do illustrations for the First Lady's Luncheon, First Lady meaning Michelle Obama. And so when I went to do those illustrations, one of the schemas that they gave me was toile to do those illustrations. And so I began to kind of take that toile and kind of engulf it into my body of work, and you'll see how and where that kind of took me a couple of slides later. When I talk about American Pathological Optimism, I actually pulled that from NPR. Any NPR listeners in here? I'm personally addicted. This American Life. And so when you think about how Americans always seeking this kind of American dream and the need to kind of fall asleep and be lulled to sleep by the desires that we have materialistically, but don't pay attention to the other things that kind of happen within the background. Next slide, please. So I torture my family members. Those are my muses. So your right, my left. This is my son. And next is on the other side is my mother and my son, and I use them as well as friends and family as references. So I'm taking photographs and creating illustrations of my family members to develop my body of work. Next one. And next one. Okay. And so this one here is dual citizen. And kind of that duplicitous nature, everybody familiar with W.E. Du Bois and how he talks about having this kind of double consciousness. I actually got into an argument with a Caucasian friend of mine because she said, well, we all live dual lives. Yeah, we do. But black people have double lives, right? Because we have to have a dual vernacular. We always have to switch. So who I am before my mother, who I am before my coworkers, who I am before this, and who I am before white people. All those are 3-4 totally different people, right? And when she speaks about Ebonics, so we have a language within the brown and Latino community and how we speak with each other, and then we also have the language King's English, mother's tongue, and how we speak with white people, correct? And so there's always this duality. You always kind of this check, double check that other nationalities don't necessarily have to do. La Pieta is my kind of take on the Madonna and Child, who speaks about the affinity, who speaks about the feelings of these mothers when their sons are being killed in the street, and daughters, right? So all we hear or all we see is hashtags and that 1 or 2 clips of a mother crying. Most recently, Stephon Clark, whose grandmother we see, on the television, but who knows the feelings and the pain thereafter, right? Nobody's there to pick up the pieces. Erica Gardner just passed away, heart attack, young woman, think about 27 years old, right? Who is taking care of her daughter. She had a daughter, a lot of people don't know that, right? So all of these things that are kind of happening with our community, who's picking that up? Mothers still nurture even when our children are gone, right? All right, next slide, please. Beauty in 16 Bars. I am a 80s, 90s kid, so I'm a Generation Xer, and therefore hip-hop is a part of my culture. So when I talk about Beauty in 16 Bars is the number of lyrics before you get to the hook, right? So that's why kids are so addicted. Well, I was addicted. So before you get to the hook, that's the lyrics that you hear. And so my hip-hop and my son's hip-hop are totally different in that my hip-hop had balance. So for every Uncle Luke or booty shaker music or gangster music, for every Ice Cube, we also had a Mos Def, we also had a KRS-One, we also had a Talib Kweli. I had balance. No balance for my son. I think the only one picking up the pace right now is Kendrick Lamar, and that's sad. You should have more than one group of people, more than one genre of music. Right now, it's just garbage. And so when you're being bombarded, well, it's important because we are people of the drum, right? And so a reason why they're addicted is because it's the drum, it's the beat. That's how we get hooked, because that's a part of our language. We are drum people. We are language people. Rhythm is our language, right? And so when you think about how they get hooked, how did we learn multiplication and adding was through root learning, right? 2 times 2 is 4, right? And so when you hear this stuff over and over and over again, to say that it has no influence on you is a lie. It's a part of our culture. It's who we are. And so you don't get a middle-class African-American male who grew up with 2 parents out here thugging for no reason, right? Initially he has no reason to do that, right? But you have a culture of music that's telling him he needs to be a gangbanger, that's telling him he needs to do drugs, that's glorifying prison culture. That's problematic.
Yeah, pure
right? All right. I am highly influenced by mythology as well as Haitian culture. We have been taught to demean and demoralize and demonize our spirituality. I look to those things because the tongue that we speak is the same tongue that a Haitian will speak. Our tongue is for those who believe in the Holy Spirit and believe in the Holy Tongue, it's the same thing that is being spoken in Haiti. Sometimes that's actually our mother tongue that we're speaking from. All right, next slide, please. And so I pull from those things. These are my sketch works and references. Next. And so one piece that I kind of pull from me creating these Southern women as well as these hybrids is this kind of meshing together of the two. This is what if the ancestors are conspiring against us? And when I say that, it's like, who is cleaning up the debris? Who is cleaning up the aftermath? When you think about our communities, 65% are being headed by African American women, right? There's no covering, there's no head of household for those of you who still believe in those things, right? And so women are being left to kind of clean up all of the debris, all of the mess. And I believe our ancestors are a part of that cleanup, right? Next. I pull from images and places of mourning. This is actually the street that Michael Brown passed away on. And so I took that silhouette and put it in the background. This is called Mourning Women, Wounded Deer, Beasts and Such Things. Next slide. I was actually commissioned by Afropunk about 2 years ago in order to create a larger mural in Atlanta. Next slide, please. Ode to the Antavius Chatham. This was a young man who was shot and killed in Atlanta, standing at a MARTA station with his 2-year-old daughter. And again, I'm pulling from images, familiar places, and putting ancestors there as images of mourning. Next slide, please. Amelie's is a local bakery, and I pulled from this French tapestry. This is actually a photo from my phone. I was really interested in that because when you think about hunting was actually during kind of the English period. It was a way that people courted to go hunting. And so I was very interested in like how that kind of tied into, you know, my own body of work. Next slide, please. And so as I began to look at this French tapestry, I saw kind of these familiar images of this kind of seeing that deer as a black man, and then seeing the hunters in the back as kind of these police figures. Next slide, please. Next slide. And so began to create my own tapestry. This is Tales of the Imaginary, 50 by 36, Mixed Media. Most recently last year, I began to kind of delve into this again, revisiting the Southern women and pulling them into my mythology. So whereas I was initially pulling from African and Greek mythology, I've decided to create my own. Because a lot of times when you hear the things that happen to us in the margins in African American communities, it sounds like myth, right? It doesn't even sound real. It sounds like a fairy tale, you know. In 2006, we had an African American sister, 92 years old, have a shootout with rogue police officers who planted drugs in her household. They shot and killed her, right? That doesn't sound real. That's not a way a 92-year-old black woman should have to die. Agreed? Next slide. How old that culture is, and giving this to their God. It's important to recognize that we don't all serve the same God. Just because people are saying God don't mean we're all talking about the same thing. That's very important. And so when you think about those things, and you think about tradition, and you think about where a lot of our fellow Nordic people come from, it is important for you to recognize their history. So they know our history better than we know. That's really, really important. They know our history better than we know theirs. They study of they have a study of African American culture. Do we have a study of them? No. No. Who studies Caucasians? Who studies them? Who is allowed? Who has the scientific? But outside of you, that has publications on the books that you're sitting around looking and studying them. Very few and far between. Others are considered, when you think about Dr. Frances Wilson, when you think about her, they are villainized, were considered crazy, all of their methodologies, and yet everything down to the T is happening. And so when you think about those things, I think it's very important for you to have language for what you're looking at and have to be strategic and to come together. All of those things are important, but I think one of the things that we have to break down or at least combat is our trust issues. We don't trust each other. We do not, I don't trust my cousins. We don't trust each other. We do not. But and when you talk about programming, I think it's more important instead of focusing on what white people do and what white people are saying and what white, you have to focus on yourself. We have to focus on our own community. How is it that other cultures come over here and they build up and they knock down and take care of everything together? They're able to live 20 people in one box.
Thank you.
And take care of things for themselves. You have, wherever you go, I'm here in California, I'm from Atlanta, wherever I go there is an Asian community, there's a little Mexico, there's a little Nigeria, there's a little Ethiopia, and it's built up and it's set. Black people, we villainize if we have a bad experience with one of our businesses. We won't shop there anymore. We don't do Walmart like that. And Walmart is constantly exploiting our community. We don't do each other like that. How is it that I go to my uncle's shop and I have an issue with my uncle? He burned the fish one time. I'm not going back. one time.
You said, the program, the way, see, people, like you said, don't know themselves. They don't understand what type of effort went into that program.
But I also
the
think
same
it has
way,
to do with,
it's the same way you're going to have to take it off
but it
to
also
get back
has
to
to
where
do
we
with
be.
morality and culture. Our cultures are being broke down. There used to be an absolute about black people. You understand what I'm saying? There used to be a thing that black people absolutely did not do. That's changing. We've been wrong too long. And so when you start, and I think that's the issue with our babies too, we feel like we have the same rights as they do. We can do what they do. We can go over there, and they're being taught that, and yet being shot and killed in the street and being told, no, you can't.
Well,
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
have to-
Yeah, I wanted to ask you one about your art because
Sorry. Let's focus on my pictures.
Because I'm thinking, did you start like I teach third grade and I already see like such like a lack of creativity even in children that young, like it's almost been sort of stripped from them by the time they're even in elementary school. So like I do a little group where for 30 minutes during the day we just do art. And I have children come up and say, is this okay? Should it look like this? And so there's sort of, and I don't think it's just in like the visual arts, but I think even in music, in literature, like somehow we've like taken out anything creative from the educational process. And I wonder, did you start with your art like young in school?
Yeah, I didn't have this.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the issue. There should be, I personally feel like there should be no technology days or an unplugged day, if not a week. But I don't think we've fast from technology enough, and I think our children are so addicted to this that creativity is being stripped away. And you think about, that's one of the first things that are actually taken out of the schools, and it's not just black schools, it's all. Creativity teaches individual thought. When you think about that, I mean, really think about that. We talk about creative people, we always the weird ones, the ones who kind of offset, but you also think about now corporations are wanting nothing but the creatives because we think different, right? And so when you think about those things, how can you kind of knock that down? So what you're doing is creative integration in your classroom. You're making sure the students receive that. But that's what you're doing. Are all educators doing that? Do they have time to do that because they're teaching to a test? And so I think one of our issues is that, especially where education is concerned, we used to kind of be in charge of what happens, and it used to be, I think this brother was talking about, we used to be in charge of how we dictate, and now we're being dictated to. That has to change. And like he said, if we are the taxpayers, we have the first say. And I think this kind of go along to get along, which is how this current president has been voted into office, is this kind of go along to get along. Now, we've had worse. To me, George Bush was just way worse than what we have. Now we have just a puppet. That's a puppet. Because he is not pulling the strings. We're all being distracted, right? Because there has never been an administration where we have been so bombarded every day. So we know him to be a distraction. My only concern is who is the puppet? Who's Geppetto? Who's the master? Who is pulling the strings? And so I think it's really important for us to be sober of mind. And the way we can be sober of mind is, I think, as a brother was saying, that we should be strategic and being together and gathering back to community. And you know why we're becoming like this? Because we have to. We have
Another
to.
thing
We don't
is
have
too,
no more choice.
one person wants to always be better than the next person.
The
You
better
know,
than.
everybody wants to be the leader instead of letting somebody lead, and you could be a leader at the same time. And then talking about your disagreements in private before you get in front of the crowd. That's what I've always noticed.
And I think that's the issue too, is that this thought process, there used to be a thing that we did not do, is to throw each other under the bus. And now we got this thing where, you know, knocking each other crabs in the barrel mindset. And instead of all of us kind of pulling everything together, you have to be like that. We have to be like that.
It's difficult though because of the perpetual historic assault that has been perpetrated on black people.
Yeah.
And you know, you mentioned about the Asians and all the other communities. Well, they did not experience the same kind of assault that the African American community have in this country since we've been. So it's a little bit different.
But it's possible.
I'm not saying it's not possible, but there's been a continuation of assaults upon black folks. You know, when we mention history, if you look at our history after the slavery system itself, we had communities that we had built ourselves. And what happened? They destroyed those communities. All they had to do was leave us alone. And we wouldn't be in the shape that we're in today, but they wouldn't leave us alone. They burned down our community.
Well, I'm gonna interject right now because it's 5 o'clock. And listen, so I'm gonna close it out, then I'm gonna bring the real pastor, Dr. Francis. They was giving me compliments today, brother. They say, "Are you the pastor?" I said, "No, I'm far from the pastor." But I appreciate the compliment. So I'm going to call Dr. Francis up here, my brother from another mother, in just a short amount. But I want to, let's give a round of applause to these sisters for doing what they do. And let's give a nice applause for this young sister in the back for doing what she's doing, doing her work. So I'm just pleased as punch. There were a lot of things that were happening that were trying to make this event not come to fruition, but God willing, it was able to come to fruition. So again, I'm thankful to my brother Millar for being the MC. Thankful for Margie for her support. Thankful for everybody who took the time to come out. You could have been at other places, and I'm glad you decided to be here. So with that being said, I know this brother's like, man, y'all don't got to go home, but y'all got to get out of here. So I'm going to bring him up, my brother, Dr. Francis, so he closes out in prayer. There are sweets and treats and everything. You guys can mingle. I think Shaniqua will have some paintings available. So again, so we could, you know, maybe talk for a little bit, but then you may not have to go home, but you know the rest. Okay. I love y'all. All right.
At this time, let's go ahead, Father. Father in heaven, Father, we thank you for another opportunity, Father, to come out, discuss community, where we're going. Father, we know you brought us a mighty long way as a people, Father. And Father, you have not stopped, Father, this progress, Father. Father, we, as a people, we have turned our backs on you, Father. We have given ourselves to this world, Father. Everything, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, and the pride of life, Father, is taken over our homes and destroyed them, Father. But Father, at this time, Father, we're calling for you, Father, to continue to do what you do. And so calling on the people of God to return to you as a people, Father. Let us, Father, trust one another, love one another. Stop being crabs in a bucket, Father, and learn the power of community, Father, so that in the 21st century, Father, that we are not extinct. Father, we know as we as a people, Father, are going through a form of genocide, Father. There are so many satanic forces out there trying to stop our progress, Father. Father, we know that our males are under satanic attack, Father. They're being drowned just like in the days of Moses, Father. But Father, you always prepare a basket, Father, for your deliverer. Father, for your redeemer, Father, for those that are called, Father, and set apart, Father, to go back to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. Father, we thank you so much, Father, for giving us the Redeemer, which is Jesus Christ, Father. And we know if we have our faith in him, Father, all is well, Father. Father, as we leave here, but now from you, Father, give us traveling grace to our separate homes of abode. This be our prayer in Jesus' name. Let's all together say amen.
You're not supposed to do this after. Hold on one second, brother. You're not supposed to do this after the closing prayer. But if you want to come to a good church for Easter, you already here. He's humble. He won't say it, so I'll say it. And I don't even know if I'm gonna be here tomorrow. But I gotta keep it 100. I'm in church, right? So, but this is a good brother right here. Also, there's a sister that many of us know, and I don't know how she's doing. T. We want to lift her up. I mean, we're talking about women, and she has done so much in this community. So, our prayers go out, and hopefully she is able to recover. So that's it.
Real quick, I just want to make an announcement for the people that are here in Antioch, and hopefully you're in this neighborhood sometime next week. There's an event as we support the sisters and continue. Diana Beckton